So.
The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe.
Oh, so you say.
This is the United Podcast Network.
The following program is closed captioned for the thinking impaired.
There we are.
I will rule the world!
We're going to even talk through the intro this time because we already thought we were on the air, you guys, and I didn't press the button.
Is this some radical new therapy?
That never gets old, though. I have to say.
Actually, I was looking for a movie to educate my beautiful bandmates this evening. I think it might be a What About Bob night.
What about Bob?
I don't think they've seen it.
Really?
This is you don't understand what I just said.
You can't die until you've seen that movie.
I think I might get them to watch it tonight.
That's awesome.
After music bingo at Sadie's Bar in Girl Salem, New Hampshire, of course. 6:30 start.
So last week was would have been our 7th
Happy
anniversary.
New Year.
Yep. I thought 6, and then I said maybe 7, but then I said no, I must be exaggerating the 7. And then it popped up in my Facebook timeline 7 years ago.
7 years.
Last week was my first podcast here, and we're entering our 36th year doing the show. 36 years doing the show, 7 years doing it as a podcast. All the other years was on radio.
Wow.
Yep.
I didn't realize.
Yep.
Wow.
We went from CCM to WEZE WROL in Boston to WTTT in Boston. For a very, very brief time, we were on another station whose letters I can't remember. And then we were on WHAZ in Haverhill. And then we found what we thought was our permanent home at WCAP in Lowell, where I was for 14 years. And then I quit radio and said I'll never fucking do it again, ever. And John Bergeron convinced me to come do it here somehow.
Oh.
All right, let's thank the sponsor. Can you bounce me up a little bit?
Sure.
Let's thank our sponsors to save some time. It's going to be a very busy show. I want to thank our sponsors: Century 21 McLennan Real Estate, Zanny Pesci Law Office in Methuen, the Marsan and Son Construction, EIS Investigation and Gun Training, Bonfire Wellness Center, Tomo and Shaken Seafood, Clear Path for Veterans New England, AFC Urgent Care, Pleasant Valley Landscaping Contractors, Harrison's Roast Beef, Prime Insurance, the Doug Mercurio Law Office, Chris's Barbershop, Enterprise Bank, W3ON, Peralt Chiropractic, Stadium Chiropractic, and I think their last week is A&J Goodwin Plumbing. And, of course, a free shout out to JG's Ice Cream, because we just love those guys.
Oh, yeah, the Freak Brothers.
It's never too cold for JG's Ice Cream.
Nope. Put the heater on in the car and
Right.
drink that vanilla malt frap. I cannot get enough.
All right, let's get this show on the road. Hi, how you guys doing? My name's Tom Duggan here at the Paying Attention Podcast. Hi, atop Two Guys Smoke Shop at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. I want to start the show off thanking Chrissy and also thanking Dave Garofalo, because last week was our 7th anniversary. I wasn't here because it was a holiday.
Yeah.
But it was our 7th anniversary here doing the podcast here at Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. It's been a pretty eventful 7 years, for sure. We've had boycotts. We've had all kinds of stuff go on.
Yes, we
And so today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about, I'm going to start the show off talking about my favorite 3, not the most highest rated, but my favorite 3 shows of the year, because I found that the highest rated shows tend to be the shows I didn't really like all that much, and the lowest rated shows tend to be the ones that I thought were the greatest shows that we've done. I think 2 years ago we had a guy named Richard Lawrence, who literally marched with Martin Luther King, who wrote a book called Light, Bright, Not So White, about being a light-skinned black man growing up in the 60s. And I've known Richard Lawrence for 40 years. He's one of the most fascinating people I've ever met in my life, and our ratings were like 9. We had like 9 people watch that
Yeah.
show. And I thought it was one of the best shows we ever did. So today, instead of giving you the top 3 podcasts, I'm going to give you my favorite 3 podcasts. And then we're going to talk about the top 10 stories, local stories, of the Merrimack Valley that were in the Valley Patriot in the last 12 months during 2024. So I'm going to try and breeze through some of these because we've got a 40-minute show and I've got 13 stories to talk about, right? So first, you can pull up whichever PC file you have first, whichever one you want to do. And I'm going to talk about my top 3 podcasts of 2024.
Let's go PC1.
Okay, PC1 is so this is freaking bizarre. We were just talking about this off the air.
Yeah.
So this was,
Wasn't this great?
believe it or not, so when Debo Brown, who's always popping and cracking, and his wife Kelly Frazier tried to use a restraining order to stop me from writing about them, and the judge granted it, which, by the way, we're going to be before the New Hampshire Supreme Court on the 16th, arguing that First Amendment case, and we are going to win that. When they granted it, I was so furious that the government would acquiesce to someone who's trying to use a restraining, it wasn't really even a restraining order, it's a harassment order, to try and stop a reporter from writing about a corrupt government official. I was so out of my mind, I said, you know what? If I can't talk about what I want to talk about, because the government won't let me, then I'm going to do a show with an empty desk for 40 minutes, and I'm going to make sure that the ads in the front are running live so everybody knows it's live. It's not just a photo, that it's actually a video of nothing. And that's what you're seeing there is that's what it looked like for 40 minutes, only the ads in the front scrolled.
Yeah,
And
I sat here just for the
You
for
get
for
paid
more
to be here.
context. I literally sat here with nobody at the desk so that this could happen.
And let me tell you
worked.
something, it was our second highest rated show of the year. Can you freaking believe that? That a show of an empty desk was the second highest rated show of the year. And so I had a lot of people email me saying, by the way, not just the second highest rated show of the year, but it was the show that had the longest duration of people watching. Like, we get the metrics after the show.
Yeah.
Some people, they tune in for 20 minutes. Some people tune in for 5 minutes. This had people tuned in and stayed longer on that show. And I got emails from people telling me why. Like, Randy Carter emailed me and said, I watched all 40 minutes because I was convinced at some point you were going to just pop up and have something to say.
Right.
So people sat there and watched an empty desk for 40 minutes. Hilarious, hilarious. All right, what do you got next?
Let's go PC2.
PC2, this is actually, I think, my favorite show of the year. This is Jeff Driscoll. Jeff Driscoll was a homeless veteran that TMF found on the streets, living in a tent on the banks of the Merrimack River. He was not ready to go for rehab, but he lied and said that he was. So we called Randy Carter, we called Yanitza over at ClearPath. They showed up in Lawrence, put him in a car, brought him to Devon's, got him in intake, put him in rehab, and he hated it so much he signed out, and 2 weeks later we found him back on the streets. We did this 3 times. Eventually, Jeff ended up getting completely clean, getting an apartment, reconnecting with his family. He now has a job, and he decided to come on the show to talk about what life on the streets in Lawrence was like for a homeless addict. And I thought it was one of the most fascinating shows we'd ever done. It wasn't our lowest rated show, but it was kind of in the middle. It was like an average show as far as ratings, but I thought it was it was definitely one of our top 3 shows of the year as far as I was concerned, because anyone who's got a family member that's addicted or homeless or dealing with this got a first-hand account from someone who was there. And this guy got beat up all the time. He was sent to the hospital several times. Like, he had a really harrowing story. And I thought this was something great for the families that are going through this or about to go through this. And people in the homeless industry, so to speak, people who help the homeless, to kind of hear from them what they thought.
Yeah.
So that was, I think that was probably my favorite show of the year. Although this next one, this is the last one.
There it is.
This was the highest rated show of the year. I'm gonna give you these numbers because when I looked this up at home before the show yesterday, 3 days ago, I'm sorry. Like the time matters, right? Who cares? When I looked up the numbers, I didn't believe them. I thought maybe there was a glitch. So I went back and I checked. And then I looked at the audio numbers, and I didn't believe those. So I went back and I checked the second and third time. These are the numbers. So this was the show after Kelly and Debo had me arrested on fake charges, and the jury found me not guilty of the fake charges. And I was not allowed to say, my lawyers would not let me say anything on the show or in the newspaper or online about any of it because they were afraid it was going to screw the case up. So every week I would come in here bursting at the seams to talk about what was really going on, and I couldn't because my lawyers made me promise that I wouldn't. And so finally, when the jury came back after 15 minutes and realized that Kelly Burchell had perjured herself during that criminal trial, and they found me not guilty, and then all of that stuff started to go away, finally I decided to come in, and we did a double show, and it was not only our highest rated show of 2024, it was our highest rated show ever, and only because of the audio numbers. I'm going to give you those numbers. So more than 10,000 video views on Facebook, more than 4,600 video views on other platforms, like we're on YouTube, we're on Rumble, we're on a bunch of other stuff. More than 5,800 video downloads. So those don't count as views. The downloads are separate. And then when I looked at Podbean, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Google Play, and iTunes, and I think there's one other that I forgot, 64,340 audio listens or audio downloads, which is freaking huge.
Even bigger than what I remembered when I was.
Right? So, but well, it was bigger than when you counted it that week because over time people discover it.
Yeah. I always forget about like the read. Yeah,
it's still online. So like a month later, someone Googles something and it comes up and they listen and go, oh, I must have missed this one. And then they listen to it. So those numbers go up. Right? So even like whatever the numbers are that you gave me for like our highest rated show 2 years ago, those numbers will be different now.
That's what I was more discovering in real time. I mean, of course, it makes sense. But yeah, so the numbers I gave you, even just for like November just gone or December just gone, they're already wrong technically. There's probably 2-3 more views on each one. And that's just for... Yeah, that's fantastic.
And then every once in a while, somebody will discover a previous show, and they'll share it on a huge platform like
and
Newsbreak.
then you get a huge
and then all of a
spike.
sudden we get like a 5,000, 6,000 view spike.
Yeah.
So it does happen. So those were the top three I thought. They weren't all three of them were not the highest rated, but I gave you the two highest rated and then my favorite show. So let's talk about our top 10 stories of the year for the Valley Patriot and online. Number 10 story of the year, local story of the year. It's actually a great state story, and it turned into a national story, so it certainly belongs in the top 10. My friend, Diana DeZoglu, the state auditor of Massachusetts, decided to take on the good old boys in Boston, in the legislature, in the Senate, and she decided that she was going to put a ballot measure on the ballot for the voters to decide whether or not she had the power to audit the legislature. And what that means is the legislature gets together and they vote on public dollars to go to each city and town for state police, for human services. But that's not what she's talking about. She's talking about how much money do these legislators spend on themselves? How much do they reimburse themselves for meals? How much do they reimburse themselves for out-of-state travel? How much money do they give themselves to be on committees? And that information is not publicly available. So Diana wanted to know how much, and also secret slush funds. So she wanted to expose the secret slush funds on Beacon Hill, where they have money that nobody knows about, that they were using to pay off rape victims and victims of sexual assault and sexual harassment who worked in the State House, and then were either fired or quit because of it. And to keep them quiet, to not tell the press what your state reps were doing, they had this secret slush fund they were using to pay people off. And she got away with it. She won question one, 72% of the voters supported question one. And by the way, state officials will still not allow her to do. Slap in the face to 72% of the Massachusetts voters, they are not going to allow her to do the audit. She's still fighting, and she is going to win, by the way. My money is on Diana. My money is always on Diana, because like me, she has never failed. She'll lose a battle here or there, but she's never lost a war. And so my money is on her. That's number 10. Number 9. This really should have been higher on the list, but we had so many other things so much higher on the list. Number 9 is a study in Massachusetts found that nearly 2 million adults in Massachusetts are going hungry. They have what they're calling food insecurity. That's the new Democrat buzzword, is food insecurity. Instead of just saying people that don't have enough food or people who are hungry. So the number of people who are hungry in Essex County, which is Lynn, all the way up to the New Hampshire border, it covers Lawrence, Methuen, Haverhill, our whole area, all the way up to Newburyport, 36% of the people who live in Essex County don't have enough to eat. That is staggering. That is staggering in a state that is run 100% by Democrats who tell you every 2 years at election time that it's the Democrat Party who cares about the poor. It's the Democrat Party that cares about the downtrodden. And if that was true, 36% of the people who live in Essex County would not be going to bed hungry every night, okay? So you could say, oh, the Democrats are wonderful because you've been brainwashed by the media or the Democrat Party, or you have a personal interest in saying that, but the bottom line is the facts are what they are. And by the way, these numbers came from the Democrats who run Massachusetts, who commissioned this study. So it's not like some evil Republican just saying that. It's the Democrats outing themselves because they're just not smart enough to be on their own side. So that's number 9. Number 8. This also should have been a lot higher on the list. This will be the first time, I believe, in the second time, I believe, in American history that a city who lost control of their schools to state receivership is going to get them back. How about that? And you have to credit Brian DePina, Octavian Spanner, who was the guy who spearheaded all of this. And I wish I could remember the guy's name who's in that photo. I can't remember his name, but he's from Harvard University. It's a very odd name. So he zoomed in, and we had Octavian Spanner here in the studio, and they announced for the first time last year that Brian DePina had worked out a deal with the state to regain control of the schools. Now that's now a national story too, because what Brian wants to do is he wants to have an appointed school committee at the onset, and Jonathan Guzman is flipping the hell out over it because he thinks it should go to the public because he's an elected official. And I don't have a dog in that fight. I think I'm a First Amendment guy. I'm the guy who believes in the Constitution. I think that the school committee should be elected. I'm not sure the whole school committee should be elected right away, though. I think we need to ease into it. We need to find a way to make sure that the schools are going to be run adequately first, and then if you want to throw it to the voters, okay. But that's a debate for another show. Number 7, seventh highest story, seventh best story of 2024. We found out in 2023. And we learned much more in 2024 in the beginning about the voter fraud that was going on in Lawrence. And this time we had proof. This time we had video of a city councilor driving around one of her campaign supporters, going up onto people's porches and stealing their absentee ballot. They were following the mailman. And here's how that scam works real quick. So you go down to City Hall, and you find out when are the absentee ballots going to go out to a certain neighborhood. Then you have one of your campaign supporters drive through that neighborhood and see whose campaign signs are on certain lawns. And then you cross-reference the two lists. And if you have somebody with your opponent's sign outside their house, but they signed up for an absentee ballot or a mail-in ballot, you follow the mailman when he's delivering those ballots, and they were going up and they were stealing it so that the person never gets their ballot and doesn't get a chance to vote. And in some cases, when they steal the ballot, they actually vote for that person and send the ballot in for the person for them, not for the person that the voter wanted to vote for. So for years I've been saying on the show, voter fraud exists. Everyone who lives in Lawrence knows voter fraud exists, but the national narrative is it's a fantasy. The Republicans just make it up. It doesn't happen. And then we had proof. And so that's why that is the 7th highest local story of the year. Number 5. I could spend a lot of time on this, but we don't have the time to spend. I got to be honest with you, this one surprised me a little bit. So what happened first was Melinda Barrett was running for mayor against Scott Wood. Scott Wood was a member of the school committee. Melinda Barrett was a member of the city council. This unfounded accusation popped up of somebody claiming that he used the N-word in a text message 185 years ago at 3 o'clock in the morning. There's no proof that it was him. There's no IP address tying it to him. But in Haverhill, if you're not in with the insiders, they circle the wagons to destroy you, and that's what they did. But in doing so, they had an illegal meeting to do it. My counter's all off up there. I'm good. All right. What?
I was going to give you one for each article. That way you know where you're at. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Thank you.
So do a couple more minutes.
So what they did is they had an illegal meeting. They all called each other behind the scenes, emailed each other behind the scenes, so that they could write a letter saying that bad people are bad. Because the public does not know that bad people are bad, that if you say racist things, that's a bad thing. But they weren't doing it because they think you're stupid, or maybe they do, and to make sure that you know that they think bad people are bad. They were doing it because one of their own, Melinda Barrett, was running against Scott Wood. The accusation was being made against Scott Wood to help Melinda Barrett, and now the city council got involved in the mayoral election, and they used their public position to do it. So I turned them in to the Attorney General's office, and the Attorney General's office said, yep, they committed an illegal act, they had an illegal meeting, and then slapped them on the wrist and did nothing about it. Well, a few months later, when Melinda Barrett wins the mayor's race, she becomes chairman of the school committee, and that's the story that you're seeing here. She has the school committee pretty much do the same thing. They have an illegal meeting to throw Scott Wood off the Whittier Tech School Committee, because the Whittier Tech School Committee is chosen, the members are chosen by the Haverhill School Committee. And so they had a meeting, didn't put it on the agenda. They all talked to each other behind the scenes illegally. And Melinda Barrett should have known better, because she just got spanked on the city council for doing it, because I'm the one that turned her in. And then she pulled it again. And it went before the Attorney General's office, and the Attorney General's office said once again, yup, you guys had an illegal meeting. You shouldn't have had an illegal meeting. It was an illegal act. Then slapped them on the wrist and did friggin' nothing about it again. So that's our number 6 news story of the year. You have the Haverhill School Committee doing exactly what the Haverhill City Council did. Melinda Barrett sat on both boards when it happened, and then the Ethics Commission had the nerve, and the Attorney General's office had the nerve to say, yeah, but they didn't do it on purpose. There's no evidence they did it on purpose. Of course there was evidence they did it on purpose, because they did it the first time, and you already wrapped them the first time. And the Ethics Commission said, yeah, but that was a different board. Right, but it's the same freaking people. Melinda Barrett sat on both boards. So anyways, that's our number 6 story of the local story of the year that we had in the Valley Patriot. And that did we got a lot of hits on that story. Like, that was really, it probably had more hits than some of the stories in the top 5, but some of the stories in the top 5 are so much more explosive that they got caught.
Speaking of,
yes.
Do we want equal time for the top 5, or do you want a little extra on,
we're gonna do a little
number
extra.
1? As in, do you want extra on number 1?
I see what you're saying. What is number 1?
Don't give it away. Don't tell me. Just tell me.
I'm looking to see what number 1 is.
You want a little extra?
No, we could probably just go even on
All right,
them.
so let's go for like a 4-minute-ish.
All right, so we're on number 5 now.
Yep, yeah, let's bring it
So
up.
this was last month's paper. This is the November edition, I think. So Brian DePena in the city of Lawrence. Wait a minute, did I miss? Hold on. What are my top? Hold on. I gotta look. I feel like I missed a huge story here that I should have. Oh, all right. It's number 4. All right. So in the city of Lawrence, Brian DePena decided, after a recent Supreme Court decision that states that communities can restrict homeless people from pitching tents on public property, Mayor DePena decided that he wanted to institute the same policies with a few changes that Lowell has engaged in, which is to restrict homeless people from pitching tents and sleeping on public property, which means parks, public sidewalks, public areas, public ball fields. There's a lot of there's Denrock Park, which is just all woods, but it's owned by the city because it's technically a park. And so the homeless coordinator in the city of Lawrence began assisting the police and giving them the locations of where the homeless people were staying to have them cleared out. And then she went on Facebook and she said, Tom Duggan's lying, no one's getting arrested. But we have the video and we posted it online of that gentleman that you see right there, who's actually a really good guy and a pretty good cop, Mo Aguilar, he's the captain, who said very specifically at the meeting, he said, we will offer them services, we will offer to get them clean, to get them into rehab, we will offer to get them housing, which I don't know how they're going to do because there were no shelters with any room. I don't know how they could plan on doing that. But he said, but if they don't take the services that we're offering them, they will be arrested. And then the homeless coordinator, who just never seems to be able to tell the truth, went on Facebook and said, no one will be arrested. That's a lie. It's a lie. It's a lie. And it's not a lie because both he and Lieutenant Fleming both said it. The mayor's office has said it, and city councils have said it. And this is in the top 5 because this is now a sea change in policy in Lawrence and Lowell and the surrounding communities as to how we're going to deal with the homeless. Honestly, I don't think this is going to work. Dan Rivera tried it, and it didn't work. All you did was you moved homeless people from where they were to somewhere else within the city. And then they started showing up in residential neighborhoods. I'll tell you, when I was homeless, you know what I used to do when I was homeless, back when I was in my 20s and 30s? Nobody locks their basement windows. Nobody locks their basement windows. Check your basement windows. I guarantee you they're probably not locked. So I used to find a house that had a basement window that was open. I would sneak into somebody's basement and I would sleep in the boiler room where it was warm when it was winter. And that's what you're going to force these people to start doing, breaking into people's houses to get warm, breaking into vacant homes to get warm, breaking into vacant businesses to get warm. So I don't see this working unless there's another component they haven't talked about. But that is our number 5 story of the year. Number 4. This one was tough on a lot of levels. The passing of Methuen Mayor Neil Perry. I mentioned when Dave Consoli was here, Neil Perry, everybody, as everyone knows, in full disclosure, toward the end of his life, Neil and I did not get along, not even a little bit. We were actually bitter enemies. But we started off as friends, and we were friends for quite a few years. And since my coma and my health issues that I had last year, and reflecting on me being sick, and since I've gotten better, I've come to realize that there were times when I was really sick and on a lot of medications and not feeling well and not being able to breathe and passing out a lot, that I was a raving lunatic. That there were times when, and Dave Consoli will tell you that he called me up one day and I just launched at him for no reason. And it was because I was not sleeping and in a lot of pain. And I look back at the last couple of years of Neil's life and the fights that we had and the things that we were fighting over, which was so stupid. And I, as much as I didn't like him when he died, since he has died, I've come to understand why he was as enraged and as unreasonable as he became toward the end, because he was certainly not, toward the end, he was certainly not the happy-go-lucky guy that we knew when he first ran. And I was holding that against him. I think a lot of people were holding that against him because he treated people very badly toward the end. However, in hindsight, looking back, it's very easy to see that a lot of that anger, a lot of that unreasonableness was coming because he was getting dialysis 3 days a week. He was on tons of medication. He wasn't sleeping right. He couldn't get into the office a lot of times. A lot of times, the fire department used to have to go to City Hall and carry him up the stairs into his office. That does a lot to... Take it from a guy that spent 34 days in the hospital, that does a lot to your mental acuity. It does a lot to your ability to mentally handle things that are going on around you. So I wanted to put it in the top because it certainly is the top news story from Methuen for the year. But I started thinking that in my lifetime, I don't think we have lost a mayor who has died while they were in office. In Lawrence, in Methuen, in Lowell, I don't think in Haverhill, I don't think in my lifetime. I'm 57. And I don't think in my lifetime we've lost a mayor. So that's why it's the number 4 story. How are we doing on time overall? All right. Okay. Our number 3 story of the year, and this one is it's huge. It's as huge as the other Diana DiZoglio story, but it's huge for different reasons. This was the front page of the, looks like September edition of the Valley Patriot. I'll tell you, Diana DiZoglio is like the Donald Trump of Massachusetts politics. Not that she's conservative. She's not. She's very liberal. But she's a Donald Trump in that, I made this analogy when she was here and she hated it because she knows what her enemies will do with me saying that. But it really is true if you think about the analogy this way. Before Donald Trump came into office, Republicans acted a certain way and Democrats acted a certain way. And then he came onto the scene and everything got realigned because some Republicans hated Donald Trump. And so they started siding with Democrats on stuff because they hated Donald Trump. And everything realigned. The Mitt Romneys of the world were cycled out, and the Tim Ryans of the world were cycled out, and Democrats on the other end started all of a sudden taking conservative positions to try and offset what Donald Trump was doing. And the next thing you know, the entire Democrat and Republican Party nationally were realigned. Diana is actually doing that on the local level here at Massachusetts. Even though I'm not saying she's a conservative, that she likes Trump, I'm not saying that, so don't take it out of context. What I am saying is her very presence on the political scene has completely realigned all of what we thought the alignment of Massachusetts politics was. All of a sudden, Democrats, Republicans like Paul Craney and Mark Lombardo, who used to viciously attack me on Facebook every day for defending Diana DiZoglio, suddenly they're doing podcasts praising her. And Democrats, who ran around talking about women, we have to elect women, it's the year of the woman, she's got a vagina, look, we have the same genitalia. Suddenly they're all attacking Diana DiZoglio. And I thought, she was a woman, you're supposed to stand together. So her very presence on the scene, and this is one of the reasons why. She found that Mass Health was paying millions of dollars to dead people. That means millions of your Massachusetts state tax money was going to people who were dead. And yet the Democrat Party ran around for the last 20 years in Massachusetts saying that's a Republican talking point. That's not true. It's not real. And why was it not real? Because they always had Democrats that would refuse to audit Mass Health. Or if they did audit Mass Health, they wouldn't release the audit of Mass Health. Or they'd candy coat it and make it seem like it wasn't as bad as it was. And then Diana came on board and said, we're just going to call a spade a spade. We're going to call balls and strikes, and we're just going to say what it is. And they hate her for it. And so that is why that is our number 3 top story of the year. Here's number 2. Wow. 5 minutes. So this should have been the top news story of the year, but I've got one that's even more despicable than this one to top off the show.
Wow.
Right? Right?
Yeah.
It's hard to beat Kelly Frazier for sure, right? But we got one that did. So we learned back in, when did we do this story? August. So I had this story ready to go for March. And Kelly Frazier, I was dumb enough to post on Facebook, coming in the next Valley Patriot, Lawrence's homeless coordinator tries to steer $200,000 to her own nonprofit. And she saw that and went out and tried to file a harassment order against me to stop me from publishing the story. And it worked for a while. Eventually, the judge said, no, you can't use a harassment order to stop a reporter from writing about you, and gave me written permission, which I shouldn't need because there is a constitution that allows this, right? But he said, nope, you are released, Mr. Duggan. You can write the story. So we finally, in August, published it. And we revealed the documents because she was all over Facebook saying it's a lie, it's a lie, it's a lie, it's a lie, it's a lie. And then tried to change the subject to I'm a bad person. In full disclosure, I am a bad person. I'm a terrible person. But that's not what this story is about. So let's not deflect with whether or not I'm a bad person or not. I'll just say right up front, I'm a bad person. I'm terrible. I kick puppies on Sundays. I steal money from the poor bucks at church, okay? But that's not what we're talking about. The story is, as homeless coordinator, she applied for a $200,000 grant for herself for her own nonprofit, which is a conflict of interest. And Octavian Spanner from the mayor's office caught her and took her name off the list. Because he said it's a conflict of interest. He also stated at that meeting that if she could produce a letter from the Ethics Commission saying that it was not a conflict of interest, they would release the money to her nonprofit. She has never done so. So this is the story of a local nonprofit called International Veterans Care Services, which, by the way, is not international. Like even the name of the nonprofit is a lie. That IVCS is what it's short for, had applied through Kelly to herself in her own office for a $200,000 grant, which is a conflict of interest. And she has flipped out ever since. She filed criminal complaints against me. She tried to put me in jail. She has attacked. You know, she's so insecure that even though I've blocked her on my page, she creates a fake page to come on my page to see what I'm posting. And if I post anything about her at all, like if I post like she was late for work by a minute one day, anybody who clicks like on that story, she will either call them, text them, or direct message them and start harassing them because they dared to like one of my stories. Like that's how insecure she is. Like that's the level of pettiness that you. Right. I just want people at home to understand what I deal with now on a regular basis. But again, January 16th, that's all going to change. That's all going to change. All right, here it is. You didn't think that there was anything more despicable than that. Certainly, having someone perjure themselves to try and put me in jail, I had a hard time finding something worse than that. But we did. We did. We found something. The number one news story locally of the Merrimack Valley is this: Salisbury slander. So we have this woman named Lisa Pearson, who is the planning director for the town of Salisbury. We have a gentleman named Tony Giordano, who applied to be on the planning board. And because he had showed up at a bunch of planning board meetings earlier in the year and opposed some of the things that Lisa Pearson wanted, she knew if this guy got on the planning board, he was going to be a speed bump for her. He was going to stand in her way of getting the projects done that she wanted for her corrupt construction buddies. We'll leave it. We'll put it that way because we're out of time. I don't want to get into too many details, right? But I want to give you the overview. So he applies to be on the planning board. She publicly accuses him of being a sex offender. Kind of like the stuff that Debo was posting about me, only she went so far as to call the town manager, to call the other planning board members, to call members of the Board of Selectmen and say at public meetings that this guy was a sex offender when, for whatever his faults might be in the world, he's not a sex offender. And she even went so far as to threaten to quit and got two of her friends that worked for the town of Salisbury to threaten to quit if this guy, Tony Giordano, was appointed to the planning board. Absolute disgraceful. I can't think of it. It takes a lot to be more disgusting and disgraceful than Lawrence's homeless coordinator, who, by the way, is now Lawrence's former homeless coordinator. I understand she's recently resigned. Probably the smartest move she's made in over a year and a half. But it was really hard. I went through all of these stories for the year. I spent a lot of time looking for what were our best stories, what were the best read stories, what were the ones that got the most hits online, what had the most responses in emails. And I really thought going into this that nothing was going to beat Kelly Frazier. And Lisa Pearson in Salisbury has her beat. Hands down, has her beat, accusing a guy of being a sex offender to keep him off a planning board. Like a planning board. Like, this isn't Congress. Like, you see guys like Matt Gaetz got accused of rape because President Trump was going to appoint him to be Attorney General for the country. You see Brett Kavanaugh got accused of gang rape because he was nominated to the Supreme Court. It's not right, but you can almost understand it. Those are like the highest things in the world. Like, those are the most powerful positions on the planet. But a planning board? That's like trying to frame somebody who's trying to get on the library board of trustees in Methuen. Like, what are you thinking? So he filed a massive lawsuit against the town, and the town gave themselves immunity. What? I had to read that 4 times when I was writing that story back in, when was that story? In March. I had to read that 4 times when I was going through the court documents. The town gave themselves immunity. Wow. So now Tony Giordano had to drop his lawsuit against the town, and he is suing her personally. And I cannot wait to see what happens in that lawsuit. And I hope he takes it all the way. I hope he's got a lawyer that's willing to bear the expense and to help him out, because she owns a lot of property. We've researched some of the property that she owns. She's got assets. He should be attaching every asset she has, and he should be moving it forward, because that clearly is, of 2024, it's the biggest news story, I think. And I think it's the most outrageous news story that we've had for the year. And if Tony Giordano's out there, I'm sure he's got faults like the rest of us. I'm sure he's got a past, just like we all do. There are things in his past he's not proud of. But being a sex offender is not one of them. And when you accuse someone of something like that, you put their life in jeopardy. Because there are people out there who might see him in a bar someday or coming out of Market Basket, and there are crazy people out there that will look at him and go, that's the sex offender.
Yeah.
And maybe jump the guy. And he has told me that he has had to worry now about his safety because of this. That's why I wrote the story. He said he was worried about his safety because he was accused of being a sex offender, and he's suing. Now, I'm going to have a similar lawsuit coming soon. We got to get through our appeal before the New Hampshire Supreme Court first.
Yeah, that's definitely a bell that can't be unrung, if you will. I definitely have strong feelings on that myself.
Yeah, listen.
Accusing somebody of something, so you can't take that back. Even if you like, that person could walk around forever with all the proof in the world that they never did anything wrong. It doesn't matter. You cannot walk something like that. Giving someone a reputation of something of that magnitude with no backing is disgusting, in my opinion.
Yeah.
There are plenty of people that have done things like that, walking around not getting caught.
Right.
To be accusing people that haven't done
it.
And wasting resources on that, in my opinion, disgusting.
You can't do it.
If it's not warranted and true, obviously.
Right.
Exceptions to every rule. I'm not trying to
You know,
point direct fingers.
The slander laws are so difficult. You know, like the Frasers are always, they're going to sue me every day. They're going to sue me because I said something they don't like. They're just not smart enough to understand what the slander laws are. It's nearly impossible to win a slander lawsuit. Now, in Everett, in full disclosure, the mayor of Everett last year, and we're going to talk about this on a subsequent show, he sued the local newspaper because they accused him of like some really outrageous shit like this. And he had the lawyers contact the paper and give them a cease and desist order and showing them proof that he wasn't guilty of what they were accusing him of, and they continued to publish stories about him anyway. And so they just lost a multi-million-dollar lawsuit, and the Everett newspaper, which I can't remember the name of it, I think it's the Everett Telegraph, but don't hold me to that, they have now declared bankruptcy. They're going under because of that. But that is like the exception to the rule. You almost never hear that because it is so, believe me, I've been sued 6 times for slander. I've never lost because I know where the line is. And that line, by the way, is really far away. I mean, it's very, very difficult to win a slander suit, especially in Massachusetts. New Hampshire as well is very difficult to win a slander suit unless you can prove, like in this case with Tony Giordano, he's got all the minutes of the meetings. He's got the videotapes of the meetings. And I think if he moves it forward, I think he's probably going to win that case. Oh. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to win my cases too because we've got way more evidence than he does. But I'm a First Amendment guy, and there were a number of First Amendment stories this year that I would love to come in and talk about, but this was about the top 10 local news stories of the year. Let me give you some predictions real quick. Do we have time real quick?
Yeah, I mean, we're over, but that's okay. Right, it's a new year. Come on.
You're the best, baby.
I try.
You want to go have lunch with me after the show?
Sure, you paying?
Yeah, of course.
All right,
see,
I would have said yes anyway. I was going to pay.
That's why I love her. I want to give you a couple of predictions. It's our first show of the year for 2025. Number one, I really think that Brian DePina as the mayor is going to run for re-election. I don't have any insight. We've chatted about it a year ago, but we've not talked about it. I don't know what his decisions are. I think he is going to run for re-election. I think he's going to have some very stiff competition. But I think he's probably going to pull it off. If he does run and he stays in the race, I think he's going to win. I also think that you've got some very big indictments coming down in Lawrence, probably within the first half of the year. We know the FBI is on 5 different elected officials and appointed officials in Lawrence that they're doing a very, very intensive investigation on. And I think that all but one of them are probably going to be indicted, and then it's going to be a matter of, probably 2 or 3 years before there's an actual trial and whether or not they get found guilty or not.
Wow.
I thought you had something to add.
No, I said, wow.
Yep.
I'm just dumbfounded.
In Methuen, you have DJ Beauregard just got elected to fill in a special election Neil Perry's shoes as mayor. That he's going to come up for re-election again because he's just filling Neil Perry's term. In November, I think you're going to have a lot more people running, and I think he's going to have a hard time getting re-elected. I think he's going to have a hard time getting reelected. Now, if there aren't 3 or 4 really good candidates, he's going to walk right in because he's got the name recognition. But if the people that I'm hearing are going to run, I'm pretty sure Dave Beauregard's probably going to serve 1 term. Now, I'm not saying that's what I want to happen. I'm just saying, given the landscape in Methuen and given the names of people who have the money that they have that are going to run that I'm hearing, I think that's probably going to be an issue for Dave. I also predict that North Andover is probably going to have a lawsuit filed against the town over this MBTA Act to force low-income housing zones in North Andover. And I think Joe Finn is culminating a bunch of people together to try and make that happen. I think he's probably going to succeed. He's a smart guy. He's got the money, he's got the resources, and he's got the connections. Donald Trump is going to replace a member of the Supreme Court this year, and Democrats are going to flip the F out about it. I also think that Donald Trump is going to become much more liberal now that he is in his final term. He can't run again. It's a 2-term limit for life to be president. So he automatically starts as a lame duck when he gets sworn into office on January 20th. Wow. I think he's going to be a lot more liberal. I think he's going to drift closer to the middle than he has been over the last 8 years. And I think you're going to have a small little revolution going on in the Republican Party, especially among what we used to call the Tea Party Republicans. So that's it. I want to thank our sponsors, of course, but I want to thank Chrissy for putting up with all of my shit for the last year. And you did have to put up with quite a bit of shit.
Let me thank you for being around to give me shit, if that's what you think you've given me.
I'm happy to be here.
I'm very glad that you are.
I'm happy to be alive. Every day I wake up.
Good.
And I take a deep breath every day when I wake up, and I take a deep breath, and I remember when they pulled out the breathing tube in the hospital, and I took that first deep breath on my own. So now I get triggered every morning when I wake up and I take a deep breath. I remember that moment, and I say, thank God I'm still here.
There you go.
So thank you for saying that, though.
Okay.
It's good to know that I am appreciated, because there have been times over the last year that I wondered if maybe the world would have been better off if it didn't go that way.
Not true. So, I'm sure everyone could agree that you are a pain in the ass sometimes, but you're also just an angel sometimes. So, as aren't we all, or trying to be. So I'm glad you're still here.
Well, thank you.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to everybody else. I want to thank our sponsors.
Yeah, hit the sponsors one more time, then let's go have some lunch.
Where do we start? Stadium Chiropractic, W3ON website design, Enterprise Bank, which is going to be, I think, shortly Rockland Trust Bank. Jeez, after all that branding that I did for them. What a shame. Chris's Barbershop on Main Street in Salem, New Hampshire. We had Chris on a couple weeks ago. He was great. The Doug Mercurio Law Office Prime Insurance, Patrick's Eatery, which is now Harrison's Roast Beef. And I understand we've got a breaking story coming next week on that. I think he's partnering with a big food guy that everyone's going to blow everybody's mind. Pleasant Valley Landscaping Contractors. Thank you, by the way, to David Consoli for filling in for me when I wasn't here and for helping us out. AFC Urgent Care, Clear Path for Veterans New England, Tomo and Shaken Seafood, the Bonfire Wellness Center in North Andover, EIS Investigation and Gun Training, Marston and Son Construction, the Zany Pesh Law Office at Century 21, McLennan Real Estate. Thank you again to David Garofalo. And Melvin Taylor says you got to go home, so go home already.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.